Mercedes have been working through the night to repair their test car after Lewis Hamilton's brakes failed on the second day of testing at Jerez. Our F1 reporter Rachel Brooks is at the track this morning. Morning, Rachel. A busy night for the Mercedes team then.
Yes, Alex, indeed, a very busy night. The teams here are used to having busy nights in the middle of testing because they try and get so many laps under their belt that at night time they have to basically break the car down and rebuild it again for the next day. However, Mercedes having to build it after Lewis's crash, and it was just after just 15 laps yesterday that he went into the tyre wall, and they told us afterwards that the reason Lewis went into the tyre wall was a loss of rear brake pressure, and then they found some problems with the hydraulics, and that has caused them basically to sit out the rest of the day yesterday. A lot of work going on. Lewis only managing 15 laps after Nico Rosberg only got 14 laps on Tuesday before he had an electrical fault. So a lot of problems for Mercedes. Just 29 laps so far out of the 2 days of testing we've seen. And so this morning, 7 minutes past 9, Nico Rosberg left the Mercedes garage, and then we saw him coming back in again, and he'd done his installation lap. Now that lap is for him just to take the car out for the first run. It comes back to the garage, they do some tweaks, they do some changes to it, and then he'll hopefully go out for a longer run this morning. And Mercedes really looking to get some laps under their belt today. It's very cold, it's not like any conditions they'll find during the year, but they need to get out on track, and they really need to test this 2013 car.
Well, we haven't seen world champion Sebastian Vettel in the new Red Bull yet either. When's he due out?
He's out this morning at some point, Alex. We haven't seen him leave the garage yet, but Red Bull, one of the teams, they've got the most laps under their belt so far. They're tied with Force India. Both have got 184 laps so far. This is Vettel running to the garage this morning, keen to get into the car and see what's going on. We then went to the garage and we heard them start the engine up, but then they stopped it. The shutters are down and the screens are around the garage right now as we speak, and we're waiting to see him for the first time today. But 184 laps over the last 2 days for Mark Webber, and that's really good for Red Bull. They'll be really pleased with the reliability of their car so far. They haven't topped the timesheets yet, but they're not too far off. So today Sebastian Vettel will get his first taste of that car and try and get out on track for a lot of laps, get a really good feel for it. And Red Bulls will probably be roughly where they want to be so far. They've been on track for almost all of the 2 days, and that will really help them with their development of this car. And then we'll see the other teams as well. We've seen also today Esteban Gutierrez, he's the new Sauber driver. He's gone out in that car, new to 2013 to Formula One, and he's out in their car this morning. Kimi Räikkönen's taken the Lotus out. Roman Grosjean's had that for the last 2 days. Kimi's now out in that, and Roman topped the timesheets yesterday. So some work for Kimi to do and get a feel of that new car. And also we've seen Valtteri Bottas, he's the new Williams driver, and he's been out in their car this morning as well. And Jenson Button is back in the McLaren after handing it over to Sergio Perez yesterday. Jenson topped the timesheets last time he was in it, so we'll let you know. Keep you updated today as to how he gets on as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Rachel. So, the new F1... Let's go live to F1 testing in Spain, where Rachel Brooks can tell us about some mind games being played by the world champions Red Bull. Morning, Rachel. What's going on? Red Bull being a bit protective of their new car this morning.
Yes, Alex, indeed. Good morning. They were doing this yesterday, but because Mark Webber got so many laps in yesterday, 101 laps, we didn't really see them doing it very much. But this morning, Sebastian Vettel got in the car for the first time, the three-time world champion. He got in the car, he went out for his first run, and when he came back in, the screens were already out, and everyone was trying to gather around to try and get a shot of the car as it came in, but screens out already. As he pulled into the pits, the screens closed in around him once more, and then as they wheeled the car back into the garage, they were really trying to protect that car and getting their engineers and their staff to crowd around and try and make sure that nobody got a shot of this, or a good clear shot of this RB9, their car for the 2013 season. And they've been doing this before. It could be mind games, or maybe Adrian Newey has got some incredible new innovation on that car that they are trying to keep secret from the rest of the teams. But there are so many photographers and so many TV crews here that it won't stay secret for long. So as soon as we know what it is they're hiding, or whether it is just some mind games, we'll let you know. Sebastian did get out on track, though. He has been out for a while this morning. Back in the garage at the moment, though. It's just the Williams car going round with Valtteri Bottas in it right now. But they will be trying to get some more laps in today. This Red Bull's proved very reliable. Mark Webber getting 184 laps in the car over the last 2 days. Sebastian Vettel will be hoping for more of the same, but a lot of tweaking going on now and some setup changes probably just to see how far they can push this new car.
Interesting stuff there. Word on Lewis Hamilton, of course, who crashed yesterday. Will he be in action today?
No, he won't. It's back to Nico Rosberg today in the Mercedes. Mercedes have chosen to alternate their drivers. So Nico was in the car on the first day, Lewis yesterday, Nico Rosberg back in today, and Lewis will be back in the car tomorrow. Teams can choose how to separate their drivers in the cars, and Red Bull 2 days for Webber, then 2 days for Vettel. Mercedes have decided to alternate. Also in the car today for the first time, though, we've got Esteban Gutierrez in Sauber. He's the Mexican driver who's taken Sergio Perez's place in the team. Perez, of course, now at McLaren. McLaren today have Jenson Button back in the car for his second day of testing. He was fastest when he went out in the car on Tuesday. He'll be looking to get a few more laps under his belt today, but that's in the garage at the moment. Just a couple of cars out on track right now, but we will keep you up to date with what happens here in Jerez, and if we find any more out about that Red Bull, of course, too.
Interesting times. Thanks, Rachel.
To F1 testing in Spain now, where there's some mind games being played by the world champions, Red Bull. Sky Sports F1 reporter Ted Kravitz joins us in the sunshine. Good to see you, Ted. Red Bull have been keeping their car behind some screens. Is that usual?
It's usual and it's part of the game. Truth be told, I think the mechanics quite enjoy doing it. It's not really to annoy us with our moving video cameras, it's to annoy the photographers, because the photographers are employed by all the other teams to get very high resolution, high detail pictures of all of the secrets of this new Red Bull RB9. It's a game that all the teams play on each other. Indeed, at the Red Bull launch, Adrian Newey was asked whether he had seen anything interesting on some other cars. And he said, well, I haven't yet had the detailed pictures through to have a look. So it's a game that Red Bull play themselves, taking a look at other bits of interesting bits and bobs of other people's cars, and they just want to make it as hard as possible for the other teams. Take a look at their secrets as well.
Well, they're all a bunch of nosy parkers, aren't they? All the teams just nosing around at this time of the year. Obviously, reliability is key for this 4-day session. Which teams are struggling in that department so far?
Well, so far Mercedes have been struggling with reliability. It's made slightly better today. They've had a slightly better day today than they have yesterday. In fact, they've doubled the number of laps than they've done in the whole test so far. Nico Rosberg doing over 50 laps, whereas he and Lewis Hamilton had only managed 15 laps apiece on the first 2 days. So Mercedes making some headway. It's a better day for them today. Lewis Hamilton will be back in the car tomorrow, and we'll be able to see if he can learn a bit more about that. Lotus haven't done many laps today with Kimi Raikkonen, so a few niggling little issues there. But the cars that have been most reliable have been the RB9, the Red Bull car, and also the Ferrari. That's been quick as well. That's really news of the morning. We've seen some fast pace from Felipe Massa in the Ferrari.
And as far as the teams as a whole, they're obviously in Jerez at the moment, and then they kick on to another 4-day session in Barcelona, and it just continues to gear up to the start of the season. How key is that next session?
Yeah, the next 2 test sessions in Barcelona will be really what defines and what gives us the biggest clue as to who's going to win the first few races in Australia, in Malaysia, in China as well, because really this test has been all about putting miles on the car, getting some reliability in place, which we've just been talking about. When it gets to Barcelona, that's a proper track. It pushes properly the aerodynamics of the car, puts proper loadings on it. This circuit in Jerez is quite twisty. It's really used for motorbikes most of the time. There isn't a Grand Prix held here, whereas the Spanish Grand Prix is held in Barcelona, and that's really where we're going to see where the true pace of the cars lies.
Ted, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
Third day of Formula One testing in Spain, hugely important one for the Mercedes outfit, which has barely featured so far. Jenson Button back on track today in his McLaren, and it's a first outing for the world champion Sebastian Vettel. We can go live to Jerez now. Rachel Brooks has been watching all the action this morning. We're Spanish very much, the colour of the day today, both of us in red. Very good afternoon to you, Rachel.
Good afternoon. Yes, bright sunshine here in Jerez. It always starts off very chilly in the mornings and gets chilly in the evening, but the middle of the day is pretty glorious. And I'm joined right now by Christian Horner, team principal of Red Bull, and it's been a pretty glorious morning. It's been ominously good so far, Christian, this week.
Yeah, no, it's good to get in the sunshine and get running again. So, I mean, this test is all about, certainly for us, just getting to learn the new car and tick some boxes and start to accumulate some data for the season ahead.
Mark's had 2 days in the car, but 2 pretty full days in the car. You must be pleased with the reliability so far.
Yeah, no, we've completed quite a lot of laps so far, which has been good, and we've managed to get through, pretty much most of the program, on plan so far. So it's Sebastian's first run in the car today, but so far so good.
What has been his reaction to the car so far?
I think it feels fairly familiar to him. It's an evolution of last year's car, so we've tried to keep the strengths and address some of the weaknesses, and with relatively stable regulations. Obviously the car's an evolution, as are some of the others.
Is there anything in particular we should be looking out for in your car from Adrian's design? I mean, we know the screens go around very quickly when it comes back in.
I'm probably not going to be telling you things like that, but I know. I mean, I think, as Adrian said previously, it's very much an evolution car. RB8 to RB9. The rules are relatively similar. Yeah, and obviously down here in Jerez, the first winter test, it's all about accumulating data.
You're probably not going to answer this one either, then, in that case. But is there anything on any other cars that have been of interest to you?
Well, obviously there's some interesting solutions that some of the teams have come up with. Some of the visual changes are sometimes not the bigger things. It's the stuff that's behind the scenes and some of the detail. But yeah, there's some nice detail on some of the cars, and but it all comes down to lap time in Melbourne is when it really matters.
We've seen some teams go for the vanity panel this year, but there is speculation that maybe by the time it gets to the first race, they'll have all been taken off. What do you think on that? I mean, obviously you don't have it on yours, but it's slightly more sloping than last year on your nose.
Well, it's fairly subtle, so that some teams have opted for it, some have gone for another solution. So I think that'll remain the same throughout the year.
And Ferrari this year have turned up with a car that looks an awful lot better than last year. What about the threat of Ferrari? And if Massa can pull out a time like that today, you can only imagine what Fernando Alonso could do in the car.
Well, it depends how much fuel they had in the car. So if they had 150 kilos, then we're in trouble. If not, then who knows? But I think that's the problem with testing times, is that it's impossible to read too much into them, and everybody's working to their own program. For sure, they're a good team, they're good drivers. There'll be a threat this year, as will McLaren, as will Mercedes, and most probably Lotus as well. So it's going to be a tough and tight year this year.
All right, Christian, thanks very much. I know you have a team lunch to get back to. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
So Felipe Massa does top the timesheets here in Jerez so far today, but the Red Bull has been very reliable. Sebastian Vettel getting plenty of laps in this morning after Mark Webber had a great 2 days, 184 laps in the RB9. We'll bring you all the latest this afternoon in any developments here on Sky Sports News.
We'll be back with you. Thanks, Rachel.
That's the third day of F1 testing in Spain, and a hugely important one for the Mercedes team, which has barely featured so far. Jenson Button is back on track today in his McLaren, and it's a first outing for the world champion from Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel. Jenson Button was quickest on day one. He's back on the hard tyres. It's been a trouble-free session so far for him. It's been very secretive at Red Bull. Look at this, Sebastian Vettel testing for the first time this week. Reliability hasn't been an issue so far, but the team very cagey. Look at that.
It's not really to annoy us with our moving video cameras, it's to annoy the photographers, because the photographers are employed by all the other teams to get very high resolution, high detail pictures of all of the secrets of this new Red Bull RB9. It's a game that all the teams play on each other. Indeed, at the Red Bull launch, Adrian Newey was asked whether he had seen anything interesting on some other cars. And he said, well, I haven't yet had the detailed pictures through to have a look. So it's a game that Red Bull play themselves, taking a look at other bits of interesting bits and bobs of other people's cars, and they just want to make it as hard as possible for the other teams. Take a look at their secrets as well.
Well, obviously there's some interesting solutions that some of the teams have come up with. Some of the visual changes are sometimes not the bigger things. It's the stuff that's behind the scenes and some of the detail. But yeah, there's some nice detail on some of the cars, and but it all comes down to lap time in Melbourne is when it really matters.
Big day for Mercedes. So far, so good. Nico Rosberg has completed over 50 laps this morning. Mercedes managed only 29 in the first 2 days of testing. Compare that to the Red Bulls and Force India, who completed 184 laps. Puts it into context, doesn't it? Well, Felipe Massa is back on track for a third day running. will be there tomorrow as well. Fernando Alonso has opted for the week off, preferring to get a full session in Barcelona. Well, Massa is absolutely flying in the Ferrari. They've gone for soft tyres, and he's quickest so far, over a second faster than his rivals. So
testing for the new Formula One season in Jerez today. Let's go live then to Rachel Brooks. Good afternoon to you, Rachel. So today was the first outing for world champion Sebastian Vettel. How's he done?
Well, Kirsty, it's been a good day for Red Bull Racing. They had a lot of laps under their belt already with Mark Webber over the last couple of days. 184 laps in total. Sebastian Vettel went out in the car this morning, a little bit later than the other teams, but still in the first half an hour, and got plenty of laps under his belt on track, 80 odd or so far today, and looking about third fastest of all the teams who are going round today. But we're looking at the times, and Felipe Massa posted a 1:17 lap earlier on today, which surprised quite a few people. But we spoke to the Red Bull boss Christian Horner and asked him if he was worried at all about the threat from Ferrari, and this is what he told us.
That's the problem with testing times, is that it's impossible to read too much into them, and everybody's working to their own program. For sure, you know, they're a good team, they're good drivers. There'll be a threat this year, as will McLaren, as will Mercedes, you know, and most probably Lotus as well. So it's going to be a tough and tight year this year.
Well, the first 2 days of testing didn't go so well for Mercedes, Rachel. Have they seen an improvement today at all?
Yes, Kirsty, big improvement. Reliability is what they were looking for. Just 14 laps for Nico Rosberg on the first day and only 15 for Lewis Hamilton yesterday. Well, Nico Rosberg's put in around 130 laps now, just over 130 laps. And he's been going around all day on this track here in Jerez. And a lot of relieved faces at Mercedes as they see their car stand up to the tests they're putting it through. And the teams here do a lot of work on setup and a lot of work on the cars itself. But then they try and do a race distance as well, just to really push the car and see what they can get out of it. A good day for Mercedes. We've got just over half an hour left of testing today, and they'll be very pleased with the number of laps they were able to put in today.
Great, Rachel, thank you.
So to the third day of Formula One testing in Spain, and a much better day for the Mercedes outfit, which had barely featured so far. Jenson Button was back on track today in his McLaren, and the first outing as well for the world champion Sebastian Vettel. Well, Button was quickest on day one. He's been back on the hard tyres, and a trouble-free day for the 2009 champion. It's all rather secretive at Red Bull. Sebastian Vettel's been testing for the first time this week. Reliability hasn't been an issue so far, but the team being very cagey about their new RB9.
It's not really to annoy us with our moving video cameras, it's to annoy the photographers, because the photographers are employed by all the other teams to get very high resolution, high detail pictures of all of the secrets of this new Red Bull RB9. It's a game that all the teams play on each other. Indeed, at the Red Bull launch, Adrian Newey was asked whether he had seen anything interesting on some other cars. And he said, well, I haven't yet had the detailed pictures through to have a look. So it's a game that Red Bull play themselves, taking a look at other bits of interesting bits and bobs of other people's cars, and they just want to make it as hard as possible for the other teams. Take a look at their secrets as well.
Well, obviously there's some interesting solutions that some of the teams have come up with. You know, some of the visual changes are sometimes not the bigger things. It's the stuff that's behind, you know, behind the scenes, and some of the detail. But yeah, there's some nice detail on some of the cars, and but it all comes down to you know, lap time in Melbourne is when it really matters.
Nevertheless, it was a good day for Mercedes. Nico Rosberg racked up about 150 laps. He was second fastest today. Mercedes managed only 29 laps in the first 2 days of testing, compared to Red Bull and Force India, who completed 184 laps. Felipe Massa nearly a second quicker than his rivals though today. Ferrari opted for soft tyres. They seem to have done the trick. And Massa will be back tomorrow. That's because Fernando Alonso is giving Jerez a miss all week. He would rather have all 4 days testing in Barcelona. James Rossiter was at the wheel for Force India today. He's the team's test and simulator driver, and it's still no news on who will team up with Paul di Resta this year.
My role today was to try to get as much information, try to get me more current with Formula One. I drove a few years ago as a test driver, and to try and help our simulator work and get our simulator up to speed, really.
How close was the car to what you've experienced in the simulator?
Surprisingly good, actually. Obviously, the tyres are quite different this year, so the main goal was for me to learn the tyres and then to be able to correlate that to our simulator.
So still plenty to be learned. Well, triple world champion Sebastian Vettel made his first appearance in Red Bull's new RB9 at winter testing in Jerez, but day 3 belonged to Ferrari as Felipe Massa posted the fastest time by almost a second. After teammate Mark Webber had completed the first 2 days of testing, Vettel completed 100 laps in his first showing in Jerez, posting the 3rd fastest time of the day.
It's good to get back in the car as soon as possible, to get into the groove again, get used to the tyres. I think they're a little bit different to last year, but then again, this circuit is quite aggressive on tyres, so we'll need to wait until Barcelona and finally Australia to give a fair judgment.
So caution from Vettel, and his Red Bull team went to significant lengths to try and keep the finer details of the new car away from photographers with that screen. And as Sky Sports F1's Ted Kravitz explains, it's all part of the guessing game during testing.
It's usual and it's part of the game. Truth be told, I think the mechanics quite enjoy doing it. It's not really to annoy us with our moving video cameras, it's to annoy the photographers, because the photographers are employed by all the other teams to get very high resolution, high detail pictures of all of the secrets of this new Red Bull RB9. It's a game that all the teams play.
Felipe Massa's 3rd consecutive day on track for Ferrari paid dividends as he recorded the fastest time by some 0.8 of a second on soft tyres. Red Bull's Christian Horner had this to say on Ferrari's pace.
Well, it depends how much fuel they had in the car. So, if they had 150 kilos, then we're in trouble. If not, then who knows? But I think that's the problem with testing times, is that it's impossible to read too much into them, and everybody's working to their own program. For sure, they're a good team, they're good drivers. They'll be a threat this year, as will McLaren, as will Mercedes.
Well, Mercedes enjoyed their first full day of productivity with Nico Rosberg completing 148 laps to ease any reliability fears over the new MO4. There was also promising speed from Rosberg as he posted the 2nd fastest time of day 3. And after posting the fastest time on Tuesday, Jenson Button had another productive day. He completed 83 laps in the McLaren MP4 28. So
Ferrari's strong showing in testing in Jerez. For the world champion, if there's a phase of the season where it means the least on the timesheets, it's now.
Sebastian Vettel's well used to the chatter of cameras, but as his jog to the garage hinted, for him there's nothing quite like the roar of an F1 engine. He's returned to the cockpit, while last year's closest challenger has stayed away. Fernando chose not to come to this test. How important is it for you to get in the car and have that first feeling?
Well, it's good, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So, but equally I don't think it's a massive disadvantage. It's a circuit where we're not going to race on, so I don't think you miss much. But for us, we've decided that way for many years now, and there's nothing that should make us change our rhythm.
Despite the usual pre-season garage secrecy and chief designer Adrian Newey's brooding presence, Red Bull deny their new cars a radical revamp. Does it need to be?
The car obviously has changed quite a lot. It's an evolution from last year, so I think we've done another step forward, which is good. So, but that's it. What we can say now, I think it's too early. It was important to do a lot of laps today, and get back into the rhythm and get rid of the rust.
Vettel's times, like Webber's on previous days, were solid but unspectacular as the team worked through aerodynamic trials. Instead, Felipe Massa raised eyebrows. Despite Ferrari bosses claiming they wouldn't chase hot laps, he'd finished the day almost a second quicker than anyone else. You can only imagine what Fernando Alonso could do in the car.
Well, it depends how much fuel they had in the car. So, if they had 150 kilos, then we're in trouble. If not, then who knows? But I think that's the problem with testing times, is that it's impossible to read too much into them.
It's always nice to be on top. No, it doesn't matter the time of the year, but surely it doesn't matter now. If there's one day or one phase where it matters least, it's now to top the timesheets, and it's most important at the end of the year. I think it's good for us now to do a lot of laps. to see whether the car is working and really go from there.
Sebastian Vettel can be relaxed on 2 counts. He has a refined version of last season's championship-winning car, and behind him a design team with a track record for making gains throughout the season. Rachel Brooks, Sky Sports, Jerez.